So the next workshop is going to be focused on food sovereignty. And that's kind of been an underlying issue with all these presentations is food and kind of being mindful of where our goods are coming from, the impacts that our purchases have on people all over the world. And what about being a nation, a sovereign nation? What does that mean? How does food relate with that? Well, we have a gentleman here who's pretty famous in this area nationwide. And feel lucky to have him come to our event and talk about food sovereignty issues and what they're doing down in Oneida to address these issues. And with that, I'll introduce Jeff Metoxen, who runs the Tsyunhehkwa farm down in Oneida.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Bo and Melissa for inviting us up to participate in the Sustainable Fair. Very honored to be requested to present on what our program is working on. I have kind of an outline that I'll be going through, and again, if anyone has any questions or comments, please interrupt me. The intent is to kind of give you an overview of what our program is working on, looking at food sovereignty and food security. But beyond that, it's really what can we do together to address some of these issues? How can we help one another? We're all talking about a lot of the same subjects, and listening to this morning's speakers, to Dr. Lopik, to Justin this morning, everyone is connected one form or another. Has anyone here heard of the Tsyunhehkwa program? Okay. Out of those people, has anyone been to the Tsyunhehkwa program? Good. Hopefully an audience that I will try and keep you awake. I hope not bore you if I do clap, raise your hands. I'm actually very proud that you have some background music playing. I can hear it. It keeps me perked up, and hopefully that's going to help us. Some of the language that we've been using, you probably all read. We mentioned it, and I'm just going to cover this kind of fast. But when we talk about what is food sovereignty, the right of peoples, communities, and countries to define their own agricultural, labor, fishing, food, and land policies which are ecologically, socially, economically, and culturally appropriate to their unique circumstances. There is a difference if you're looking at this, especially for students who are here or studying some of these areas. You'll see that between sovereignty and then also security. What is food security? When all people at all times have access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food to maintain a healthy and active lifestyle. When our program got started, Tsyunhehkwa, I hope not to spend too much time on this, but I want to kind of give you some background to where we are today. The term Tsyunhehkwa, in a loose translation of the Oneida language, stands for it provides for us, or it sustains us. Tsyunhehkwa itself has three components: agriculture, cannery, and retail. Its origins, although based in our Oneida cannery, which started about 1977, 1978. The Tsyunhehkwa program didn't become evolved until about 95, 96. And it did sprout from that cannery, food processing, food preservation. And the individuals who were working there, over these years, they had their own garden. They were doing fine food processing and preservation. And an opportunity came up with the Oneida tribe, recognized is that a small farm opened up, had about 40 acres. For those of you who've heard this many times historically, even in our areas, regardless of where you're coming from, you hear about family farms shutting down, larger corporations taking over. Our friends, or even ourselves, may have had some of these farm operations, and they had to shut down. They just couldn't make it. Well, on one hand, that's also an opportunity, and that's what happened in the United area. One of these family farms had about 40 acres. So all the structures were there. They had the barn, they had the house, they had many other pole buildings. They had fields. So individuals had approached our business committee, our government, for Oneida, and said, here's a plan. We'd like to start something that's going to work more in these areas. We want to talk about the cultural aspects. We want to talk about agriculture. We want to promote this. And we want to move beyond. And the closest program at the time was the Oneida cannery. They were talking about food preservation, not just processing, but preservation. That 40-acre site allowed them to grow into having a little bigger garden, not a massive one. It's not by any means large. A garden that a few people could manage, grow, and process those in the cannery. They also had the opportunity to get into poultry. So they were doing egg layers, but they also doing broilers. Chicks they would raise for X amount of time until they're ready to process. They got into cattle. All of this was still based on the foundation of Oneida. Traditionally, we're the hunters and gatherers. When I look at that end and that comment, from my point of view, they were gardeners. They were always agriculturalists. They always knew what was provided for them through nature. When we talk about the three sisters, mostly in this crowd, everyone automatically knows it's corn, beans, and squash. For the Oneida tribe, white corn was our traditional dish. When Tsyunhehkwa program started, we already had white corn in our community. Actually, it was done by family members. And growing up, I've been born and raised in Oneida area. To share with you, the white corn was a specialty. We never had it except during the holidays, right? Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving. So we'd have corn soup, corn bread. We knew who to go to. That was dying out. The number of families that would grow white corn that would share it or sell it, it was never a great deal. It was never meant to be that way. There wasn't that many anymore. There was a handful. And the Tsyunhehkwa program provided the opportunity to have an entity that's in Oneida concentrate on the white corn, and that's what we're doing today. We had planted about, it always ranged from 4 to 6 acres. So again, not a massive field, not acres and acres, 4 to 6 acres, white corn. And that's because of the Tsyunhehkwa program that we were able to do that. And when that comes up, it's so automatic for us. That's part of our sovereignty. That's part of our food sovereignty. That's part of the security that goes into what we're able to provide our community. We wanted to make sure that white corn itself wasn't going to die, that we didn't have to rely on the stores out there, other areas, that we had to become somewhat independent with our community to help one another. And that's what really I see as bringing us to today. We've been able to do, we've still got a long way to go. And what we've been learning all along. These traditional practices of taking care of the white corn is something we're learning as well. One thing I want to make sure in the presentation is that I am not trying to tell anyone what to do. That's very important because I take that same direction in a sense. But I want to share what we're doing. And I'm hoping we can learn from one another. What are the next steps we need to take to maintain these actions, these directions? With the white corn, we had elders we could rely on. We were talking about how do you take care of this? How do you make sure that it's done right? And we screwed up. I've screwed up. We talked with the experienced families I mentioned. What's the process they're following? What did you go through? And we were very fortunate to have some good land to work with, some good soil. And we used all the resources that were out there, both tribal and non-tribal. We worked with our extension offices. That's a big part of what Tsyunhehkwa program does, is the white corn. I look at it as the foundation of our entity, as to why. We do a number of other things that I'll touch on a little bit as far as the 3 components I mentioned, agriculture, canning, retail. When you hear about the 3 sisters, there's a symbiotic relationship with them and why they're planted together. And it really doesn't matter which tribe you came from, where you're talking about. The 3 sisters has a common connection, how they help one another, how they work with one another. I look at Tsyunhehkwa's program of ag, canning, retail in that same light. There's a symbiotic relationship. It's not money-based. That's a struggle we're facing now, internally as well as externally. When you hear me mention the retail stores, right away people think enterprise, how much money is going to make, how much is going to pay me, what do you sell it for, blah, 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 stuff. That's part of it, but that's not the sole part. The agricultural component grows the corn, cares for the corn. The cannery component processes the corn, preserves it. And the retail component provides to the community partially by selling. That is accurate. There is funding there. There's money involved. But it's not the rich scheme. It's not how much money you make. It's not this white gold that we're talking about, which I think that's important. But it's something. Where our corn products at the retail store can be cornbread, corn soup, corn bush, flour, cornmeal. These basically are all traditional products that our tribe has always had. Basically has always shared and provided to the people. We get our funding from tribal contributions. So let's cover it. Clarify one of the issues when the individual look at us. We do get grants, we go for that. But almost all tribal contributions. For those of you who may work within the tribal structures anywhere and you realize that your budget is based on what you're submitting, you're hoping those other decision makers approve of what your process is, how much you pay employees, how much the inventory costs, how much tractor costs, all of these things come into play. Our responsibility is to constantly educate those decision makers. This is important. I don't want you to look at always the bottom line, money. How much does the retail store make? Well, I want to make the retail store bigger so ag can reduce some cannabis. No, they're together. They're important. What happens to one affects the other. So we've been working very hard in that particular area. And that's something that falls in line with the food sovereignty, with the food security. I'm going to try and do an overview of each area and the components as far as like ag. When I talk about some of these things of what we're doing, it isn't enough simply to grow a particular item, regardless of what it is. Our agricultural component started a program we call the seed and plant distribution. It is open to the public. Now, everything that our program does is open to the public. All products, all services. The seed and plant distribution is a time for the month of May. Basically starts the first week of May and it ends, I believe that's Labor Day, the holiday in there, the last week of May or first week of June, so about 30 days. When it began, you would be charged $2 and you were provided about 25 different packets of seed of a variety of garden items. And you were able to get about 12 different seeding plants for that $2. That was all part of an encouragement to have you start your own garden. When they began it, I'm trying to make sure I provide some information. Hopefully it's beneficial to you, but also give some lessons in there because personally I prefer presentations where I tell you both the good and the bad. So here's an example of learning things. When the seed plan started, they didn't know how many people were going to show up. 25, 100, a couple hundred. They were able to get some funding to begin this. So you're looking at how many seeds they're going to purchase. How big is a garden you're going to plant? How many seedling plants do we need? Where the space is? Well, all this combined, they prepared for about 300 people, let's guess. So that's 300 times 25 individual packets of seed. So there's a lot of prep work in there. First year went great, fantastic. Got rid of them, took about the whole month. Started in May, done. Trying to shorten the story here to get to today. Second year, maybe 200 people showed up. So you have 100 extra stuff sitting there. Do it. You just spent that much time prepping for it, growing it, and you have it still there. Third year, about 150. Fourth year, about 100. These are signs that you're learning from your whole steps process. Again, it's not necessarily a negative way, but I think it's an important knowledge to share. You have to change. You have to revise. You're always evolving. You're always developing. You're always learning. Personal pitch, you've got to know the past. It's going to have an impact on the present, and you're going to have differences in the future. That's important. It struggled internally to grow. Stop making 300 packets. If you've seen our greenhouse or been in one, 300 packets of seeds can fill this room up, and it's like, but we're only getting rid of a third of them. Why are you spending all the time, energy, money on this? Knock it down. So what we have today is 250 packets that we prepare for under the seed and plant distribution. And again, part of that is really more on the food security level. How to get individuals. Again, anyone can come. And we do have people, not just in the Oneida area, both tribal and non-tribal. Because of this program, we're also trying to engage it. We're helping our community. And
to put this as delicately as possible. I'm not trying to help Milwaukee. I'm not trying to help Door County. I'm not trying to help, no, it's a community that we're trying to do, so we're monitoring who's tapping into the services. Out of the 250 packets, it's taking us about 2 to 3 days. So instead of having people come through in a month, when we start, say, May 9th, by May 10th, 250 packets are gone. That, to us, in the last 2 years, it's shown that we're having an impact. When we track, the best way we can track is just ask you, would you please sign up, your name, where you live, would you like more information on the program? 90 to 95% of those individuals are within our community. Not just the Oneida Reservation. If you've seen a map of it, it does stretch also with Brown County, not Game County. I would say that's a more accurate description, that we're reaching within 2 counties. And the Oneida Res is split, if you've seen the map, equally between Brown County. So we still have some coming from Door County, Milwaukee, and others. But it's having an impact, and that was the goal. I can't see ever stopping the seed and plant distribution, as we call it. But we're revising it, hopefully to meet those needs. We went from having 25 packets of seed and about 16 bedding plants. The bedding plants, by the time we're ready to provide them to you, they're about 6 to 8 inches high. They're different tomatoes, peppers, some brassicas, cabbages. Well, you might only like pumpkin, and beans, and onions, potatoes. What are you going to do with the other 20 packets of seed? So those are some things we also changed. Now we're down to about 16 seed and plant strings. That's something more common. We're asking people, what do you want? Not what I like for a goal. Not what this person, what do you want? So we did 2 surveys and changes and things like that. Same with the bedding plants, reducing. Those are things we're still learning from. We're still going on and sharing. The other process that we offer is a tilling service, just tilling. And I know Menominee offers it. We're very fortunate to actually have David Miller, member, part of your council, Menominee. Jonesy is also our agriculture worker, part of the program. And I know he has his own tilling service with the community, and I know there's others out there as well. And that's what our program offers. We have a small tiller that's no bigger than maybe a foot across to the tractor size. That could make it hard. We only go as big as half an acre. We aren't going to come and do acres for you, the tilling service. It's a small site, actually, And again, it's more geared towards individuals, families. That lines in with the seed and plant distribution. And we have people, because of where Oneida is in the Green Bay area in the city, that's where the calls come in for the small lots. They're on the side of the house. That's the biggest spot they got. And they just want us to till up in there. We charge it for them. Again, it's not to make money, isn't it? It's to help offset those costs of travel contribution. Again, it's going to help you with your presentation to whoever your decision makers are when you start certain programs and want to move forward. I'm more than willing to sit down with anyone and share some of these plans and ideas and what information we can and cost involved to do some of these programs. It's possible. It's going to take some time. It's possible. But the planning is so very important. Under the cannery process, when they began in the 70s, that's how it kicked off. They just wanted a way to which they could show people, you can process your own food. You can preserve your own food. And it still does those same things today. People there can do work for you, and there's a small charge. Or you can use the facilities yourselves. And if you're not sure, they will actually show you how to do these things. And if we're not sure, we work with the Brown County Extension Office. We work with the other entities out there on the federal level, USDA or FDA. And it is basically, okay, somebody wants to process this particular vegetable. We know nothing about but they want to preserve it. We can tap into recipes and say, okay, how do we use our equipment to do that? And that has come forward. There's an elderly gentleman who hunts still, and he got his own rabbit soup. And he uses our canning process to make his own soup in quarts. So that's part of his preserves for the winter time. In the retail area, if you see the store, I recommend just kind of a chance to stop in and look at it. 90 to 95%
5% of the products, though, are not from our program. But they do have is different coffees, teas, herbs. They also have health issues, body care. So you see shampoos, you're going to see vitamins, supplements, and it's all natural, all organic. That's how the retail got started. It still kept that foundation of our program. Not necessarily only cultural, but that natural part is always there. And that's what retail does. Also ends up being basically the seller for all the rest of the products. Our agricultural will take care of the corn and growing it, but we do sell it raw because there are people who still like to process their own. We also process it. Those other products I mentioned, the bread, soup, the meal, the retail stores sell that. So you can pick up the products there. A big part of what the retail component is looking at is education. So what we'll do is like, okay, you have an issue or you want to learn something, we're not there to sell you this and say, here, this is what's going to take care of it. There's never a magic pill. I mean, that's a big part, I think, what they're going to. We eventually learn. But there's no quick weight loss, there's no stop smoking, there's no whatever it is. But there's stuff that can help you. And what we promote is naturally. And that's what we're really going for. We're also stressed the education level. We have a lot of resource books, manuals, materials, contacts, that if someone's looking for some information, it's not going to sell this product. It's not to, okay, pay me $3.95 or $12.95 and here's this. It's, here's some information we have. This is some knowledge we'd like to share with you. These are some other avenues. Those are some changes. And those, again, just to touch on, it's something that we face internally and externally. The retail store does have a markup. It is selling to the products. The only discounts at this point, basically the coupons that may be provided, are senior discounts, elderly discounts that is offered. It's comparable to the other stores out there. If you did come to our area and you look to Walmart, there's also actually a couple of grocery stores in the area. But it's not this money scheme, and that's very difficult to address. Anytime people outside, I think, our area heard retail, it's money. How much are you making? How much does it cost? What are you paying your employees? All important information, but not the most important, not vital. You know, you must know. This whole area that I talked about, the Tsyunhehkwa, one of the things that we try and get out to the community, it's so important, and it's nice to hear the other presenters talking about this. How do you let people know? It does no good to sit here and say, here I am, come to me. For what? Well, you've been doing this so long. So what? How can you share this information? How do you reach the people out there? One of the things that our program is working on is a workshop calendar, or activity calendar. And it just covers dates. It goes on basically from February till December. And each component does a workshop, whether it's on making buffalo jerky, how to make cornbread. Retail has an open house, and they've been doing it since the last 4 or 5 years. And it's just to educate the public, educate the people, the community. This is what our program does. This is what we'd like to provide to you. This is what we're offering. We also have wildcrafting. Number 6 is actually a bergamot, an Indian tea. When I grew up, when I was sick, for our coughs and colds and flus, my mom would always make Indian tea for us, she called it. It's amazing. We can find it in the area. And she learned it from her mom, her grandma. And we have that. We show people how to do it. So it does no good if you have this knowledge, have this information, and you're not sharing with anyone or finding a way that gets it out to them. So this workshops is just part of it. The stories we have as individuals is also part of it. I think that's important to hear some of this contact, things that you're working on. It does fall back under the food security. It does fall back under the sovereignty issues. Growing up, for me, Indian tea was something that I enjoy now. I kind of always did. And it's got a very, when made, it's a very strong, pungent tea. But when it comes to a sore throat or some digestion, sinus issues, it's worked for me.
and something that our program. I hear people coughing, so I'm getting it over. I'm sorry, no. And the wild crafting is simply showing individuals this is where you can pick it. This is the best way to pick it, harvest it, and to dry it out. These are some of the ways that we try and take the products, the knowledge that we have, our goals, and reach out to our community. And it isn't in a way that, okay, I know what to do. I don't know what to do. But I know this one gentleman who's been harvesting for forever. So we asked them, can you put the workshop on for us? We have a location. We'd like you to talk. I know this lady who's been making the corn soup forever, and just wanted. So we do share our knowledge, but we also recognize that you have resources in your own community that we forget at times. Tap into them. You know, how do you reach them? How do you get them to share? And a lot of times, until we actually approach them, you'll never know how much they know. You don't know that they've been canning all their lives, that they've been harvesting their own herbs that they follow until you actually talk to them. And it is difficult at times to open up. So it isn't just going to happen, knock on the door, hi, what are you doing, okay, will you come put the thing on, will you share your life's history, your generation. Most of us think, I think know that, but I've come across some individuals who seem to have difficulty comprehending. I'm not going to open up to you because you're knocking on the door. Nice, cordial, and respectful, but until we get to know each other. That's important. That's part of getting to know your community. That's part of opening up, and it's part of sharing the information. Out of the Tsyunhehkwa program, in Oneida, there are 2 entities. Has anyone ever heard of OSIS? Oneida Community Integrated Food Systems. You all hear that? Or does it count with this? It's not myself. What about an entity called OLB, Oneida Living in Balance? Anyone ever heard of that one? Okay. OSIS has been around since about 94, 95, and almost like it's word. I don't want to keep saying this title because it's so long. Oneida Community Integrated Food Systems, that's what it stands for. OSIS and OLB, Oneida Living in Balance, that's about 5 years old. Both entities I'm a member of because I represent Tsyunhehkwa program. In its way, the title of OSIS, Integrating Food, is what it's doing. Its members consist of Tsyunhehkwa, the Oneida Nation Farm, the Orchard, and our health center. Our health center representative is actually the health prevention department that's part of it. Excuse me. All this material actually is also online for those of you digging up. You can check out Tsyunhehkwa or OSIS. OLB is a little bit on the homepage of Wisconsin. OSIS is trying to reach, it was geared towards lower income, our struggling families, getting nutritious food to them, especially local food. And that's what we're looking for. OLB talked about healthy living and local food, and it probably concentrated on, we've been concentrating on local food and health. So through that, on the health aspect, they started offering cooking classes to the community. Anyone was welcome. The cooking classes that OLB started came from a grant that was targeted to the Oneida Tribal School, so only Oneida Tribal family members were able to come to these community cooking classes. So that was grant controlled. And we just wanted to show some of the things that we're facing is that we had so many young individuals having children who don't know a lot of these things. It's natural for us, for many of us actually, if you want to cook, or to take care of. When you get something, you actually have money to go out to restaurants. Well, a lot of our own people, they don't have that. They don't have the resources. Our children are having children, and they're still in high school. So the cooking classes was geared towards those individuals and those families. And these are some simple dishes that you can make. They're very inexpensive. You can make local food. Everyone was welcome under that umbrella of tribal school.
So we try to get a lot of those young individuals who have the children, we try to get even the parents or the guardians or whatever, they already share this. And what I liked about the cooking classes is that what it did is you were cooking, you were there, it wasn't sitting in this classroom like this. I hope I'm not boring you, I'll try and wrap this up actually in the next few minutes. But instead of someone talking to you, which is very easy, kind of, we talk a little bit, and we talk about the nutritional value of the food. We share with you why would you pick this particular item if you're going to eat macaroni. If you're going to, well, select this item, this is why. They would go through the nutritional labeling as in which we're talking about reading some of these labels, getting some of this knowledge. You would cook it then. And as it was being cooked or processed, it would take about 20 minutes, half an hour. Then it was at our, we were very fortunate for Oneida to have this resource. I call it a couple macro room at the Turtle School, has 6 stations with a full kitchen at each station. So we were able to break it up. You cooked for this time frame while it was processing, cooking, whatever, 45 minutes, half 45 minutes. You were doing a physical activity. Then they took us all to the gym and nothing major. It was designed to be working with the children to the handicapped, the elderly. So if you were in a wheelchair, which we had something that could show, stretching, movements, anything at all, it was basically geared towards fun. Not, oh my God, I gotta lift weights, I gotta run around, or this, blah, blah. We worked with our family fitness center and let them people know, we're trying to enjoy it. So for about a 2-hour time frame, you got a nutritional lesson, you cooked yourself, did some physical activity. By the time we're done, we kind of talked a little bit, then we all ate. And then the cleanup done. So it was about 2 hours, and that was part of through OLB's direction. And that lasted for 1 year. What it did provide for us is an ability to learn, because this was something new for all of us. This isn't something, okay, I want to do, and oh, I already know how to cook, and I know how to jump, and I know how to talk. And we didn't know anything. We didn't know who was going to come up. So we were very fortunate to work with a dietitian, work with a number of other counselors, and just kind of worked our way through it. You know, nothing was perfect. We had classes where 4 people showed up, to classes where we had 20 people showed up. And for myself, I was fine with that. We had 10 to 15. You know, we were keeping people's attention. And the particular classroom, the home ec room, could handle that. And now we offer about 2 a year. When it first started, they were doing like 4 or 5. That's a lot. And if you haven't done some of these events, you know, you already have your own work to take care of, and then you're doing an after-hours events, and you put it together 5 or 6 times a year. And you get burnt out. So I'm glad that we said, okay, let's do twice a year. Let's do these well. Let's do these 2 for the spring, and we'll do a fall. The one coming up, it's next week. Wednesday or Thursday, it's the 29th of September. And it's actually going to use the poultry from Tsyunhehkwa, some of our garden produce, and we're going to share with the community members how can you cook chicken. And what this is, these 6 kitchens are not cooking all the same way. There's 6 different recipes. So you might be boiling it, you might be frying it, you might be whatever, baking it. And that's just done with everything. Earlier this year, we did how to make your own pizza. And again, it isn't just, you want to enjoy it, you want to like it. So how to make your own pizza, whether it's just using this particular meat, just particular vegetables, what to look for when you make it yourself, and share with them. This is cheaper if you made your own than going out to someplace. That's OLB's area in Oneida Living in Balance. And then OSIS has also been working on how do we educate the community? Do we even have these programs? I know tribal individuals who probably heard the word Tsyunhehkwa, but have never come to any of our events, have never been to any of our components. So how do I reach them? Those are things we're working on when we talk about education level and looking at these things. It's entities such as OSIS and OLB and Tsyunhehkwa and working with each other. And we don't always get along. The Oneida Nation Farm is a conventional farm. It is the one that you may have heard of. It has thousands of acres of cash crops, whether it is soybeans, corn, wheat, I didn't know, but that's them, that's okay. They also have the Black Angus cattle, they have the buffalo, they have the bison, and the orchard always. But regardless of our issues, we do talk about how do we get more into our community? How can we do that? Through our OSIS meetings, we kind of work on it. We used to have a session. It's called the Taste of OSIS. We did it for a few years in a row, and we stopped it due to budget cuts. And we do want to go back to it. And the Taste of OSIS is exactly what it sounds. We simply shared the food with the community. It was free. So that's a budget cost, but we just want to show them, this is what we're doing, this is what's offered to you. What more do we need to do? It isn't always important what I think, that isn't the primary thing. What does your community want? How do you find that out? We've learned some of it through just talking, how things are going, workshops that are not change, just keep offering. A couple of years ago, we completed the Oneida Community Local Food Assessment. Has anyone heard of a food assessment? Anyone heard that term? Again, Melissa. A food assessment is simply a tool, I would say. If you wanted to find out what your community is looking for in local food, or what even knows about local food, the food assessment is a tool that's been developed for several years now. First Nations Development Institute put a great program together, and that's what we use with ours. We're still working on it. We did complete it in 2008, and we're trying to take the results from that data. It's a survey, if I could bottom line it. The food assessment is a simple survey asking where do you shop for your food, how much do you spend on your food, where do you go to shop, would you be willing to learn more about, and that's a wide open question, because we put in food preservation, food preserving. Do you feel you know enough about nutritional label reading? Do you want more food classes offered? The food assessment is a tool I would recommend you look at. I'm not saying you have to use, but I think it's a very valuable information you can gain from it. What we pull out of our food assessment is that we started out with a 10-page, 56-question food assessment, which took us over 45 minutes to answer. Now, if you're trying to survey your community, do you think anyone would sit through that? So we learned that it's smart. We didn't do that. We need to learn a little more, because we simply brought it down to 5 pages, 36 questions, and when I did it, and we worked on the survey together, it still took me almost a half hour to complete. There's other tools out there. I'm bringing it up because I think it's something that if you're looking at this, it's going to help you. What is the community looking for? Again, not what I want, not necessarily what you want. You're trying to get something your community is looking for. That's what's going to help you with deciding what direction do you look at for your food security. What are you looking for? What is needed for your food sovereignty? I've seen some food assessment tools on 1 page. So I would say my recommendation, go between somewhere in there, 1 to 5. You're gaining anyone's attention. Think of yourself. How long would you want to take a survey? 1 page can give you some information, but I don't know how much it's going to give you as a total. 5 pages is too much. We plan on doing another one, but probably not for a couple of years. And it will be smaller. And we did everything to get this tool out there. Door-to-door, mailings, and plus how many of you actually fill out a survey? If you were given the opportunity right now, how many are going to fill out that evaluation of this particular assessment, unless they tell you you'll get an extra grade point or something else for this t-shirt, that helps you. And we did the same thing. We actually had door prizes, huge door prizes, monetary value to them, to enter. If you did the survey and you had your name and address, you got entered for this. And it was all the way up from $500 gas cards. We had about 3 of them. Then we also had $300 gas cards and $100 gas cards. That's some big dollars we put because we were trying to gain this information in the community. Door to door. If I walk up to your door, you're going to answer for me. And then say, can I sit down for a half hour of your time if I can fire this through? Again, just a tool, just some knowledge to share. The food assessment, one of the things is that we run into, and we've done the same thing. Okay, you got this data coming in.
What do you do with it? Okay, great, I got some answers, and not everything is not the solution. It has to be shared with your government, your decision makers. We recognize that within Oneida, because of our program, yeah, I'm sharing it with our governing council, our business committee, but I also want to share the data because out of the responses we got, and again, we did this kind of random, it wasn't just tribal, because our community is both tribal and non-tribal. It was probably about 60% non-tribal. The response we got back, about 40% tribal. And they were spread out through both Brown County and Ivy County. Again, to just kind of give us some kind of reading. What is our people, what is the community looking for? So we're also sharing this information with those people. How do we get back to them? Because again, one of the things I hate doing, and I've done this myself, if I take a survey, I'd like to have something result out of it. Well, where does this go? So we've been printing out articles in our travel newspapers, and we're trying to share it with our community newspapers and saying, these are the results we got back from the food assessment. These are some of the things that we talked about. As far as useful information requested, 75% wanted information on nutrition and healthy eating and cooking. 90% use frozen foods during the week, and 70% use fresh produce weekly. 50% of the respondents can store food in an emergency. And under those particular areas, that's exactly what falls under food security issues you're addressing. What we also wanted to share is, okay, you get this data, and you don't want to shake anyone up. You don't want to, you're not trying to scare anybody. I hope I'm not, it's not an intent at all, but I like when I talked about what can you do? And that's what we try to share with the individuals. And this is something, these are common things. So we may have reworded it a little bit, but we wanted to share what can an individual do? And it was, let your dollars do the talking, which makes sense, it's common. Let the store know that where you're going, I like this product. Could you look into it? The more people that make that comment is going to give that entrepreneur, okay, you know, I want to take care of the customer, so I want you to look at this product the more you're buying. Also, meatless Mondays. That could be anything. One day a week. Drop meat. All of us generally, I would say, I'm not speaking of, but all of us like meat. Healthy, it's not the best for us. So it's moderation. I never say quit. I'm more of do what you can do kind of thing. But the impact it has. We also talk about recommending eat at home more often. Because some of the studies that we've gone through, that we've worked with, the children eat twice as many calories when they go to a restaurant eating out compared to what they're eating at home. Because we're also more mindful of what we are serving at home. Supporting farmers markets in your area. Buying the food from that particular local area gets back into local food, local produce. 80 to 90 cents of that dollar spent at a farmer's market goes to that particular farm. Imagine where your dollar goes if you go, and I'm not downing on anyone, such as any grocery store, whether it's a Walmart or a festival or whatever is out there. This is information that we are sharing with our community members to provide some direction. Not telling them what to do, but sharing that you can have an impact on the choices that you're working on. When we talk about food security and food sovereignty, one of the things that is important, and I'm having a real difficult time getting together, is I'm looking to help the tribes work with one another. I don't know how to do that. I've made, very fortunate to make a number of presentations on our Tsyunhehkwa program and things that Oneida is working on. And I want to know who to talk to other tribal nations in the state of Wisconsin. How can we work with one another? And I don't look at it again to say, this is what Tsyunhehkwa Oneida is doing. You know, you got to follow this. No, I want to say, this is what we're working on. I'd like to share with you. These are the mistakes we've made. These are the growing spurts we've had. These are the evolutions we've gone through. How can we help one another? When we talk about sovereignty, I'm recognizing Menominee sovereignty, Stockbridge, Muncie, all those tribes. We've had this discussion outside the state of Wisconsin with other entities that are similar to ours. There's the Tohono in Arizona, the White Earth Land Recovery in Minnesota, Muskogee Food Sovereignty in Oklahoma. Taos County, Economic Development in New Mexico. And I guess I was looking at it and saying, wow, we're going out, which is nice, we're sharing. How come we're not talking in our own backyards? How come we're not communicating about that? And for the last couple of years, I've been trying to get together a food summit. I use that term to say, I just want to talk about traditional indigenous foods. That's all, simply. For us, we're going to share our white corner process, things we've learned from that. I'd like to know what does Menominee want to work on? How can we help one another? And I hope, I don't ever mean to offend anyone in this way. And it's not to tell you what to do. And it's not the exact opposite. I'm not here to listen to you to tell me what to do. I am here to learn from one another. This is what we're working on. This is where we screwed up the white corner. We had some issues that took care of, just how we addressed it. This is what we're still working on. What are resources that you want? When I talk about food sovereignty, it's those choices that as tribal nations that you make. What is it you're trying to preserve? What is preserving? Looking at our communities. Those communities are everybody, both tribal and non-tribal. What are the steps we need to take care of that? I'm looking at something to propose. How can we get the Wisconsin tribal nations to meet together to just talk? Because I already know that as soon as I said some of this stuff, well, who are you? Oneida coming in here telling me what to do and how to do it? No, not at all. I want to talk. That's it, plain and simple. One of the things, the first thing I present is, you can learn from it. What are your resources? What already exists? And you have so much. Your own people, your own families, your own knowledge, it's already there that you can touch base with and look at what is it that we're preserving? What are we looking for that's going to ensure our food security? What's going to ensure our food sovereignty? You cannot have food sovereignty unless you first have food security. That they go hand in hand. There are some slight differences, but they go hand in hand. So understanding what is that food security we're looking for. So you don't have to look at how much money does everything cost all the time. That's always going to be there. We'll stress that. Don't ignore that. But it's not the value. Not when you're talking monetary value. It's the value to your culture, to your traditions. That's what you're preserving. That's what you're trying to hold on to. And that's what you're sharing. That's what the goal of everyone, I think, is to our generations. How do you pass this information on? So I can talk and I can write it down, but when we can show each other, we can share the knowledge. That's what's going to allow our culture to continue to grow. Our culture and traditions continue to evolve and never lose that past, that foundation. There is a document we put together with some of the individuals and entities I mentioned from Arizona, New Mexico. Some of those areas are tribal, but honestly, some of them also non-tribal. There are some people that took up the cause, and I think they've had some great knowledge and great support. Muskogee Food Sovereignty Initiative and Taos County. There are tribal individuals working with them, but if you do get a chance to study them, they got some great resources and great backgrounds. They kept it going, even when they dealt with some of the same internal struggles of those of you who worked with the tribes and yourselves, and I've done this. Even when budget cuts come forward, they somehow kept things going. When we've met, the last few years, we've been getting together every now and then, we put together some principles of native food sovereignty. And I guess some of the things I'd like to close with in that is that they talk about how it's important for us to recognize what that food sovereignty is, and that we decide. This is an area where I would stress of getting your tribal people together and figuring that out. Because it's so important for that you as tribal members to decide what is that food sovereignty, not someone else. We decide. For Oneida, I talk with the other Oneida tribal members, and we're looking at it, we figure out how we can go. It's not excluding anyone outside, but it's recognizing the importance you have as individuals, as your own sovereignty issues you're addressing, what's going to happen. Because we'll always have others saying, this is what you should do. How do you know? Those are some struggles you face. The principles of native food sovereignty, we put that together back in 2008. And it's been signed off by some of those representatives I've talked about.
And what we're simply doing is because what happened is we had an individual who's a non-tribal member write a book on tribal food sovereignty. Wait a minute, how are you deciding what this is? This is ours. And then we had another individual writing another book and printing it and getting money and putting it out there, and it was going to his coffers. This is ours. We're the ones who should be writing this. We have to work together. I'm not excluding that. But you cannot talk about tribal sovereignty, food sovereignty, unless you're talking to that tribe. Going on the web and looking up a page and printing a picture doesn't cut it. And it's been happening too many times. So when we came together, that's what we were saying. We need to put this up. I went a little over my time. I apologize. I hope the comments that I've made came together a little bit. I kind of wanted to talk about our program, Tsyunhehkwa, and how we're looking at food sovereignty, food security, what Oneida is doing towards that particular area, but also share some of the knowledge that we have. Yes, sir.
Question, have you noticed any changes in, if you look at the health data for Oneida, diabetes or high blood pressure, anything like that, since you was
No, and in fact, on the negative end, these are things that we're facing ourselves when we talk about the local food issue and what we're providing. We have an alarming rate of diabetes type 2 within our children. We have an obesity issue that we're facing with our children as well as in the adults. And we also have so many issues with stress that our health center is, like anyone in tribal areas, is extremely busy. What we don't want to lose focus on is get lost in those numbers. So that's one of the things that we'll use with the justification of our program. This is why it's so important to have local food. This is why it's so important to have gardens. It's very beneficial within our group that OSIS mentioned. One of the ladies who works in our health prevention, that's exactly what she's working on, is kind of the at-risk families. And letting them know there's a farmer's market in the area, that there's workshops going on if you don't know how to garden. There are so many opportunities out there so that we're not lost in. I would not speak against McDonald's, Hardee's. I use it myself, I drive through. But I think one of the biggest things we face is knowledge that you have a choice. You don't always have to go there. You don't always have to spend this money in a particular direction. There's so much you can do as an individual for yourselves and your family and your friends, but it's reaching those people that's important to get that knowledge out there. This is why we do a lot of these things, as you mentioned. And I know all individuals are facing this, but I'm a diabetic myself. I have to watch what I eat. I have to watch what I'm doing. There are choices I could have made in my life that would have had a difference on that, but I don't let that control me. I'm aware of the situation. I'm trying to make those changes. But I won't sit up here and preach. I say enjoy it, but do it in moderation. Find out what your traditions are. And with the knowledge you have, share that. That's how you can make a difference.
Yeah, my dad let me have a garden by his place, and we ate the squash and zucchini, and I canned 15 quarts of tomatoes for them, you know. So I kind of took it up as a little hobby, and just thinking of their health, you know. And they're 81 and 73, so just that was my, I guess, recognition of all the stuff we're eating out there, you know, fast foods, and so it's just a start, you know.
It's big.
Anything that helps, yeah.
Okay. Keith's my cousin as well, so I paid him $5 to come in here and say something. But he's worked with our program a great deal, and he's been a benefit to our program. I know he's also worked on the poultry areas, but in the gardening. It's very impressive. A lot of the comments of the other speakers, I love it. Small steps are so important. That is. The garden, one size is table, I would recommend you start. Because if you go you'll burn out so fast. Too hot, and you've seen this summer we had too wet, too many bugs. I don't know what I'm growing, and I pulled out what I planted. So, start small. Any other questions or comments?
know, it's,
I know the lunch is waiting for everybody. I'd like to thank you for taking the time, and please contact me. I am on the web, or call us anytime. Everything is marked down. Thank you.